Live, Talk 99.5, Lonnie's Furniture Company bringing you the show tonight as we continue to be live down on the coast, watching the sun go down. Going to be really wet weather around Birmingham this weekend. Valentine's weekend is going to be almost a washout with several inches of rain. Even though it's much needed, it's bad to have just a washout weekend, but deal with it. Here we go as we keep going from down here this week. Y'all, again, Lonnie's Furniture, what a great place to shop. And I've told you about them for years. And from time to time, you just want to freshen up your home, even if you just need a rug or a lamp or an accessory. Or now that we've had this little warm stretch, you're getting excited about getting back outside. I will tell you, this outdoor line they have called Green Country. It's what some people call polywood. It is an artificial wood, but the color that it makes it. The way it works is the color goes all the way through, and it's superior to wood in that it's more durable. It doesn't crack or chip or splinter, and you're not constantly painting it and maintaining it. Over time, the elements are just going to destroy outdoor wooden furniture. But you still have that look and feeling of wood. It's got that style. I've got two Adirondacks, and I don't know why I picked white, but I bought them from John probably 3 years ago. And these things are stark white. I'm going to set them outside. They're just sort of my outside sitting chairs out in the grass. Those things are still, all I do is hit them with a pressure washer. And they're heavy as lead, and I dread moving them during grass cutting season because I always have to move them out of the way and put them back. But I'm just telling you, it's very well-built stuff, and you can custom order any color you want, and they come in a lot of different configurations. So maybe you want a glider, or maybe you want low chairs around a little fire pit, or you want other stuff. High tops, they got little bar tables for a pool area. This stuff is so beautiful and durable. Go see them at Lonnie's and get that ordered. You know, we're just weeks away from warmer weather, and before you know it, it'll be outdoor time again on your dock or your deck or your patio, your porch, whatever you got going on. It's Lonnie's Furniture Company, exit 280, Lonnie'sFurnitureCompany.com. All right, man, we got at the top of the hour. I'll just go back to the thing that's sort of driving the news today again, and I'll give the caveat that I was really looking forward to having a break from the Guthrie case because there had not been really any tangible developments, just more and more speculation until today. The authorities just about 2 hours ago, maybe 3 hours ago, came forward with this surveillance video from the doorbell camera on the house of a dude in a mask, gloves, full sleeves, pants, backpack, creeping up on the house, messing with the doorbell camera and being around on the porch. Now, that's all they released. And it was to give the public some images of what they're calling a person of interest. And we don't know much more than that. You can tell this person seems to be a dude just by their gait and their body language and their body movements. And you can see a beard and mustache through the holes in the mask. The immediate speculation from those that are internet sleuths about them thinking this was a related family member somehow in that costume. Let's go with that theory for a second. Why would a person that would have access to get in the home go to all that trouble to cloak themselves this way? The gloves too are weird because they look like he's got on two sets of gloves. It looks like latex gloves over the top of some thicker gloves. The hands are almost look like boxing mitts. And the guy's just sauntering around the front of the house, just really calmly attempting to sort of cover or put vegetation. He grabs some pieces of the shrubs and tries to put them over the camera. None of this makes sense based on what we think we know, unless, in my opinion, at this point, and that could change 30 seconds from now the way this case goes, that person was staging this video. I think they walked up to that camera on purpose. I believe right now it looks like somebody staged an abduction. That's a grave statement to make because in all likelihood, depending on the timeline we have a timeline on when her pacemaker separated from its monitoring and when the garage doors were open and closed. What we do know is the last person to see her that night apparently was Tommaso, her son-in-law, Annie Guthrie's husband. Now, police searched their home this weekend. They searched in septic tanks this weekend. And this afternoon, they're canvassing neighbors of Annie Guthrie, Savannah Guthrie's sister. They're going door to door questioning neighbors in the close proximity to Annie Guthrie's house, not Nancy Guthrie's house. So make of that what you want. All I know is the video. It reminds me, if you remember, this guy that went on a shooting rampage in Minnesota. I believe this was last summer, and he shot those politicians, and he wore that rubberized, phony mask that made him look like somebody else. It made him look like a bald dude, and he goes in, and this infrared video is always just more ominous anyway. The eyes look creepy. It looks like something right out of a horror movie, and this kind of has that vibe. This is very, very crazy-looking video. All I'm saying is, and AJ and I have talked about it and given our takes on it, but I'll drag him back into this again. If you saw this on your camera, what's the first thing you do? I mean, you look and you get an alert that this dude's out there creeping around with a mask on your camera. I'm blowing holes in the door. I'm not even going to take the time to open the door. That guy's going to be full of holes pretty quick. There is no reason for somebody to be dressed like that and messing around outside of a home. What if you saw this on a surveillance camera, AJ? This guy with a ski mask.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that just kind of pops up in my head because it's like, now I'm wondering how long has this person been surveilling the house? And
yeah,
you know, is there other images outside of the one that they're putting out that kind of show some unusual person or persons that was in the general area? And if they got cameras, obviously they have cameras around the neighborhood with the house. Because now I want to know, did they capture the abduction on video? And if so,
yes.
What is that? What does it look like? Is he carrying her? Is he walking out? Because then you also determine on that aspect as well too. Did she know this person? It's mind-boggling.
Think about this. I thought about this during the break, and we're just going to go with this story at the top of the hour because it's just what's going on right now. Because there's activity right now around this video being put out. They've shown us this video of the approach to the house, but they've not released anything, like AJ said, of her leaving the house, okay? And they were able to reconstruct this video where we thought this video didn't exist. In other words, people saw a camera, there had been a camera at some point, but the data wasn't reported in on any recording service. But the data stream was still there through the companies that provide these services, and somehow the FBI's got technology to take unseen data and reproduce it into a video. So if they could do it for that, clearly they could have done it for an abduction, assuming that a camera would be there when she was removed from the home. We know she's not in the home. They keep going back and searching the home, anything close by the home. I think this makes sense. I'm piecing stuff together because we're all doing it, but let me just walk with me through my line of thinking. Again, my caveat is my line of thinking right now, because I could completely change based on the next round of evidence. But they were searching that septic tank because I think they don't have any evidence of how she left the house, right? So if they're able to create this thing, whatever this is today, this person of interest, coming up directly to that camera almost intentionally. I mean, who walks up? AJ, you're going to kill or kidnap somebody or break in the house, you're going to walk right up to the camera and look at it even with a mask on?
Right.
I mean, you go around to the back or you do something else. I think they don't have any video of her death or being removed from that house. That's why they're digging through, looking underground to see if somebody could have stashed her or taken her to a vehicle, because I believe this video was part of the staging. I think something happened, whether it was domestic within her family or somebody she knows. It happened suddenly. She died, and in the process, they staged an abduction. And that would be create this character to walk right up to the door. I hate to tie the two because they're not tied, but the story I just read to you last hour about the suspicious circumstances around Kurt Cobain, it was too neat. The investigator said it's too obvious, it's too neatly laid out to look like a suicide. This seems to be almost neatly laid out to be an abduction story, and it may not have been at all. To abduct a woman who had no mobility, who wasn't a very lightweight woman, and there's no car in the shot. So you got blood drops to the driveway, but there's no car in the driveway in this shot, at least not right in front of the door. You can see the driveway in this nighttime shot. So if they did park in the driveway, they didn't park where the blood drops were, where if you believe this video camera was working and they could recreate this. So this doesn't show an abduction, and it doesn't show a way the abduction would have been carried out at all. Now, again, we don't know what else the cops have that they can't share right now. They're putting this little dangling this out there to close in on this dragnet, or to buy themselves time, to be honest with you. Let's explore that for a minute. A lot of public pressure, constant scrutiny, constant updates with the networks at the top of each hour. A lot of fatigue starting to set in with some of the public that just can't seem to get a handle on this case, including me. I'm doing what I believe is my news due diligence to go through this headline because it's developing right now and there's a lot of interest in it. But I'm tired of the case. I'm tired of the story. I wish they'd just find them and get it buttoned up. I'm really sort of exhausted with talking about it. But something's not right about this. This guy looks like, AJ, tell me I'm wrong. Challenge me on this. This looks like he's cosplaying a burglar. I mean, this looks like Home Alone.
Yeah, it looks like he doesn't know exactly what he's doing. I mean, right. I kind of figured that part out when he pulled up the bushes and put it in front of the camera, like with his hands. So I was like, okay, this is amateur. He has no idea what he's doing right now.
And then suddenly this goober that didn't anticipate a camera, he didn't like whip out a can of spray paint and spray the lens or cover the lens or have a thought about it. He walks up and stares at the camera, then goes and grabs bushes.
Yeah.
Unless he's on meth, nobody's thinking to grab some weeds and put it over the camera.
Right.
He could have just slapped the camera off the wall.
Could have done something.
He could have smacked the camera, and that would been the end of the camera. But he makes a point to be on camera. And now allegedly the camera was missing. And this is all we have, and we don't see anything else. I think she died somewhere else. I think either died somewhere else or died in that home and they took her away, maybe in her own car. The timeline's going to probably get changed around from that. We also learned just a little nuance to the case that we had been told she didn't show up for church. And she always showed up for church, and that's why people first became suspicious on Sunday after whatever this was on Saturday night. And by the way, this is supposed to be in the hours of early Saturday morning, this new video. Well, she didn't go to the sanctuary to church. Apparently she did church online streaming, which a lot of people do nowadays. It's a convenient thing, and some people just, especially if you're in her case, you wouldn't have the mobility to get in and out. It's difficult to get in and out of there with help of others, and maybe it's just easier for you to be able to watch her service. So apparently she and a group of her friends would watch together on Sunday in her friend's house, and that's where she didn't show up. That makes, in some ways, some people found exception with that angle on the story, but to me that makes a little more sense, because then she'd be obviously missing. If she's just one of 2 or 3 people that gathered every Sunday and didn't show up, well, that's altogether different than she goes to a larger church and somebody just happens to notice that she's not there. So, y'all, it feels ominous, and we've had calls day after day about this. It's just hard to believe this woman's actually alive right now. I know Savannah Guthrie's got to believe that, and I'm sure last night's video that she put out while we were still on the air has to do with this video. I believe last night she seemed to have moved on from this ransom attempt, which they had just talked about the day before, and had just gone back to the public to ask for help, knowing that this was going to come out, and they need eyes on this video. They need clues, anybody that has any idea of who this is. Now, according to the TV detectives, and I call them TV detectives, these are real-world detectives that have great experience and are smart guys, but they're now hired to jump on TV and help the news anchors sort of filibuster. I wish AJ, I need a radio detective here on the show to jump on and fill time when we're trying to piece together these things as amateurs. But some of these guys really do have good points from time to time, and several of them have said repeatedly, with the FBI's ability to recreate this video, they have already traced that backpack, they've traced the shoes, they've traced that mask, they know where it came from, who made it, probably where it was purchased, if this person purchased that outfit. They know a lot. That this was a clumsy attempt to do whatever they did. Now, some people think they see a gun in this person's front waistband as well as they approach the camera, but they don't believe any gun was used. So we don't know anything about that gun, but the cops will be able to with this really very, very clear imaging, be able to deduce a lot about that weapon. And you can only see sort of the grip, but and it does appear, just on my amateur analysis, I'm looking at a still shot of it right now on my video screen. Looks just like a Glock handle. Looks about like probably a Glock 19 or maybe a Glock 22 or something like that, based on the length of that holster. And it also looks like it's in the wrong holster. It's weirdly carried. AJ, would you carry your gun like that? Have you seen? This guy's got that thing hanging down right by the digit of his manhood. I don't know that I would carry a gun that way. Yeah, that's just
no. It's way too close.
And by the way, back to the neatly stagecraft of this thing, you put the gun out front for the world to see. It reminds me of the Poncho and Lefty song. You remember that line in that song? He wore his gun outside his pants for all the honest world to see. Am I getting poetic right now? Good Lord. What a story. What a twisty, crazy, turny story. And it just exploded this afternoon, whether I like it or not, right back in the news cycle. So here we are talking about it again. Crocker Moving Services. If you got to move, sometimes you just got to move, or you got some things to move. You're not moving yourself, but things that got to go in your house or got to come out of your house, or some of your family members are moving off on their own. You need a good mover. It's Crocker, without a question. CrockerMovingServices.com. Eric's a straight up solid human being who's got a great company around him. All those guys, the back office, the schedulers, those guys that show up at your house to move your furniture. It takes a team to do this kind of logistics, and Eric has assembled a very good team. I think they respond well to his leadership too, because of his skills he developed in the Marine Corps of just, you do the right thing, you do the hard stuff, and you do it properly. That's the perfect training for a moving company. So if you got to move anything, take advantage of the fact that they'll scale their services to what you need, down to a minimum of 2 hours. They got to account for their time. So talk to them about how that works. But Crocker Moving Services, y'all reach out to him, CrockerMovingServices.com, CrockerMovingServices.com. Back after this, Leland Live. Man, let's get back after it. Sun going down here in the Keys. Man, it's only 70 degrees outside. That's pretty nice as we get rolling along. Hey, Huey Tampon has sold, man, they have sold the heck out of those ATI shotguns, those AR-12s. I knew they'd be popular as soon as we put them on the air, and they sold them out in a hurry. And the way Tommy does this is he'll get a deal on these shotguns and rifles and pistols from time to time, and he'll discount the heck out of them, and y'all come and get them. And then when he's done, and then you got a shop full of good bargains and great things on everything in terms of guns, personal carry, tactical stuff, hunting stuff. They've always got a good line over at Hueytown Pawn. But these AR-12s, he put them on deep discount. Y'all wiped him out. So he sent me a message, I think it was day before, and said, we're sold out. Hold up on those. These are G-Force AR-12s. They got them in a blowout price at $279. Well, he just got another shipment in. They just hit the ground right as we were coming on the air today, and some of them are in that new color. It's called tungsten gray. It's a real popular color. The others, I think, are that desert kind of color. So, man, if y'all want them, they're going to sell these out in a hurry, and there are not many of those gray ones. So it's just whoever gets in the door first. These AR-12 shotguns, 12-gauge shotguns, smooth as butter. Y'all go see them, $279 at Hueytown Pawn. I don't even think I need to tell y'all anything else about them other than they are a wonderful place, and Tommy's a good guy to get to know, Hueytown Pawn. All right, let's squeeze some calls in. We'll go to Robert in Pleasant Grove. What you know, Robert? What you got tonight? Roberto.
I just got a question for you.
Okay.
Before I ask the question, I just got to just bring up to speed to what my point is. I got rear-ended one time in a truck, and it was some question as to whose fault it was. And we stood around there about 20 minutes, and the police got an aerial view from the satellite of the exact moment, the exact second. And this is some time after we had just had the wreck.
Oh, wow.
And I wonder, have they went to that extent to get an aerial view?
Well, if they have it,
satellite.
and now granted it was at night, that'd be even more difficult to see from space, but we don't know that there's aerial view available. But that's fascinating that over a car wreck they could get that kind of surveillance on your case. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I'm sure if the FBI, as many people as they have on this, they're going to use every asset in the federal government. If that's available, they're going to use that too.
Well, I had to answer the question, That was bugging me.
I got you, man. Hey, Richard, good call. AJ, did you know they'd be looking at you from the sky when you have car wrecks?
Oh, no.
Man, this is George Orwell time right now. We're finding out about them recreating video from data that we couldn't see, and now they spying on us from the satellites. Y'all better watch it. I told y'all earlier, I'm not going to pee in my yard anymore. I'm staying in the house. I'm not doing anything outdoors. Back in a minute, Leland Live. Y'all stay tuned. All right, here we go again. Leland Live, talking at M5, Douglas Cooling and Heating, ready to take care of business at your house. We're sort of getting into that in-between zone where we're kind of using the air. Sometimes it's been a warm week, and then we'll have the heat back before you know it. There are some outside chances of another cold shots coming up. Winter's not over yet. So go ahead and get Douglas on your list of experts if you have an emergency or it's just time to do a replacement. Sometimes you just get a sense of that. It's just time to do it. The system hadn't been looked at in a while, or it's getting on its last leg. And so do it when you're not in an extreme season, and let Douglas take care of you in such a sort of planned way so you can do it out your system for a little while, and they come out and do the install and get the new stuff in there. Financing, of course, extended warranties on everything they do, and they really do stand behind it. And I love the Douglas Care Package. That's where you sort of put yourself on autopilot. I call it autopilot, but twice a year, you've got a much more affordable package to have them come out and do the system maintenance that's required. I often say it's a lot like not changing the oil in your car and just running it, and we all know better than that. It's a mechanical part of your house, and it needs to be maintained. Y'all, it is Douglas Cooling and Heating. They've taken care of me for 16 years now on every home and property I've owned, and even my friends and family over those years. And Jay and his team do a remarkable job. It's calldouglas.com, C-A-L-L, calldouglas.com. All right, what else can we get into this hour? I think I've exhausted every thought I have on this Guthrie case. We did have some calls holding. If y'all want to get back in here on that, we'll go back to it. Somebody mentioned to me that we didn't talk about Green Day also playing in the open to the Super Bowl. I really don't care. It was in that pregame thing. They were off in a corner. It's still Green Day. I just never liked that band. They're just kind of overrated. But this Billy Joe guy, lead singer, I got to admit, I saw this when I did see it live. We had the pregame on. But, dude, he looked like Phyllis Diller, man. I don't know when all these old rock stars just turned into old washed-up Subaru drivers, you know what I'm saying? But that's what he looked like. Like he was customer of the month at the local Subaru dealership. I'm just saying. Y'all know what I'm saying? Anyway, all right, so there's that. That's all I have to say about the Super Bowl. Thank goodness it's over. Real quick, I noticed that, and this will be of interest to a lot of people in the state that are just disgusted with the welfare fraud that is going on in other states. We got one of these press releases that the state is now starting to send, the state of Alabama is now starting to send out EBT chip cards. In other words, people are getting EBT benefits. I don't even know how the old cards work, but I know it's just one of those things where they can load the card up. But the chip feature, I think, would add more security and tracking on what's being used and purchased, especially if people start to put restrictions on these things. Look, it's not cruel. It's not cruel. It's a gift. Out of the goodness of the hearts of the taxpayers of this state, people get supplemental assistance. And every time it's robbed, stolen, or wasted on Mountain Dew, y'all can love Mountain Dew if you want to. Certain things are just not healthy, and we shouldn't be paying for it. We should not be, because guess what? We subsidize this bad diet stuff that everybody can buy and all this processed crap that people are eating, and then we're going to have to pay for the health care on the other end. We're going to have an obesity epidemic that goes with the welfare crisis, and then you keep buying people free Mountain Dews until they're at the ER, and we're having to pay for their health care bills as well. It is reasonable to put restrictions on a program like that, and I think the state increasingly is going to move in that direction. And my understanding is, not being an expert on the technology whatsoever, but these chip cards will be a lot more accountable in that way. All right, let me go back through some other things on the list. Let's go back to some of the Epstein stuff today is still circulating in the news. What a disgusting episode in American history. And it's just that story, I thought once that document dump came out and you got those 3 million documents with the redactions, that would almost kill the story, because the only thing giving the story life was this mythology that surrounds people with Trump derangement disorder, that somehow they're finally going to get the Roadrunner and tie him to the Epstein case. And then, of course, reporting came out overnight and today that not only was Trump not involved with any abuse of young girls anywhere near Epstein, there's zero evidence of that, and there never has been. But it was that Trump was one of the initial whistleblowers, if not the first whistleblower, to call in the local authorities. He particularly called the local sheriff on whatever was going on with Epstein. He picked up on something. It was probably the sketchy activity that Epstein and his bandmate Ghislaine Maxwell was doing in and around that part of Florida where Trump had Mar-a-Lago, and he famously kicked him out of there and disassociated himself. Something went down that creeped him out, and he called the cops. And it's in the Epstein report. What else is in there is Steve Bannon looks terrible right now. Steve Bannon, a fiercely loyal to Trump, one of these forward conservative thinkers, but had many, many more deep ties to Epstein than anybody realized. And while there's no accusation that Bannon was part of the criminal activity or the compromise operation that people start to look at when it comes to Epstein, the truth is these elitist people all run in the same circles. But Bannon, even some of the reporting about Bannon today looks very, very ominous and sick in some of the things he was doing, maybe even things to go after Trump that we didn't know about. When Epstein turned on Trump and was trying to use any resource or leverage he had to keep Trump out of the White House because of the whole, probably back to the situation where he called the cops back in 2006. So this thing did take some turns, nothing singularly dramatic, but the Bannon, what occurred to me when I kept seeing Bannon's name come up and repeatedly in some of these files is that maybe that's one of the people also that Trump knew was going to get smeared when this came out. I think he's got a sense of loyalty to Bannon. Bannon went to prison for his refusal to testify before Congress, famously or infamously, by now we know. And I think Trump understood that some people that were going to look bad in what was known but didn't have anything to do with the hardcore stuff that was being alleged. So people are still doing what we suspected they would do. They're filtering through these things, looking for pieces of evidence that point to their political enemies and trying to capitalize on that. But it just has not borne fruit for the American left. In fact, it's embarrassed more of them than not. Some of the bigger scandals involve the United Kingdom. They've got members of their government now being shoved aside and having to step down for their associations in this operation. And who knows what other creepy stuff we're going to find out. One of the other twists, we gave brief mention to this earlier, one of the other twists that came out in this case today is that some of the victims that are redacted in the Epstein documents were actually recruiters as well for Epstein. Now, how sick is all this? So some of the members of Congress, Lauren Boebert, for one, went in and read some of this material and came out and gave this sort of cryptic statement about some of the victims aren't victims. I didn't know exactly what she meant until we got clarification today. So apparently, because again, Congress is looking at unredacted versions of these documents where all that's been removed so they can see who was redacted. It's been made available to them. And notice you haven't seen any Democrats coming out saying, oh, they redacted Trump's name, because they didn't. So, but what they did do was they had redacted some of these girls who, once they matured, became groomers for Epstein. So in some ways, they were part of the predatory circle that he built. I believe the reason the redactions stayed intact, the reason their identities were covered, is because the way they initially got introduced to that operation, they were victims in the beginning. And in that, not to give them excuses for any ongoing activity, but once they got sucked in, very impressionable young girls, sucked into this stuff, abused and compromised, and then allowed to stay around if they sort of went to work for them. Epstein was notorious for sort of graduating these young girls out of the system, and they would either dump them off and be done with them once they'd used them after they sort of aged out. That's sick, but it's just what was going on. Some of them they kept around because that's an easier way for them to get access to girls that are even younger. And some of these victims, that some people will say with air quotes, may have had something to do with the ongoing operation. So that's complicated because, again, they wouldn't be there if they weren't abused in the first place. They wouldn't have been involved with Epstein to do anything if they weren't drawn in at a young and very compromised and impressionable age. So I'm going to give a little latitude right there. But that has also angered some members of Congress, and some of that's coming up today too, including one of these women that was in that category of being listed as a victim, but also being known to help Epstein, was one of the ones that was buddied up with Marjorie Taylor Greene back when she was trying to make her stance and setting herself on fire over this exposure, saying she was going to do it, which of course she never did, name names and do what she said she was going to do. She tried to position herself as the biggest activist on behalf of the victims. Turned out one of the victims wasn't as victim-y as we knew about before this document done. I know that's confusing and it's a lot, but it's just one of the other stories that any other day would be making headlines, but with everything else going on in the news, that's just what we're dealing with this hour in that case. All right, Michelson Laser Vision, let's talk about your eyes. If you've got glasses or contacts, I am telling you, get that out of your life. I would not have done it if Dr. Michelson had not reached out to come on the radio show. And then I finally went down there and went through their program to see how it works. And again, I tell you that story every time because I think it's important. That's when I realized how it made sense. The fear that I had, the trepidation I had, I was squeamish about the whole concept of eye surgery. I mean, some of y'all get the shudders just thinking about it. But once I understood it, it made sense. The science made sense. And then they examined me and found out I was really an easy fix. I wasn't even on the risk spectrum of the fix. And it turned out my procedure, which was less than an hour, was one of the best decisions I ever made. So granted, they're advertising on the station, but even when they're not, I'm telling people about LASIK and Michelson and how you can get the encumbrance of glasses and contacts out of your life for good and enjoy your life again. I mean, to me, there's a safety aspect in that too. You're never fumbling for your glasses, so because you can't see in a quick situation. You can see all the time. You open your eyes and you can see. It's nice being 2015. Michelson Laser Vision, downtown UAB Highlands, easy in and out of there. I always try to mention that. Some people get the sort of the heebie-jeebies about going to that big old complex downtown. They're not part of the main UAB campus. They're a couple of blocks over with their own dedicated parking lot. And so it's one of the nicest visits. And that team there around Dr. Mark and Dr. Jennifer, just wonderful folks. It's MichelsonLaserVision.com, MichelsonLaserVision.com, Leland Live, watching the sunset down here in the Keys. We'll be back here in just a minute. Y'all stay tuned. All right, it's 4:54. Leland Live, Talk 99.5, Axiom Tax Resolution Group. Here we are, smack in the middle of another tax season. I know my CPA is on my case. Get your stuff in, and I need to get on it, and I will be getting on it very, very soon. It's a cumbersome time. It really is, even if everything's on track and you're not going to owe a bunch of money and you got all your documents ready because you've done good that year and categorized everything. It's still a process. And then you add to that the fact that some people get behind. The IRS thinks you owe them money that maybe you don't owe them, or maybe you do owe them, but it's a lot of money and it's just going to wreck everything. That's when you need Perry Cronin and the good folks at Axiom. Perry will just absolutely help you get this stuff sorted out. There's no one in the country that knows more about settling these things. No one that knows more. I mean, there are plenty of good experts, but Perry knows as much as all of them, and we're lucky to have him here in Birmingham because that way you can deal with this stuff in a very personal way in front of him, face to face. I mean, some people, I guess you want to trust going to an 800 number on them online or something like that, but I'd rather deal with this stuff in a private way, and you can't beat face to face. And Perry will sit down with you, and he'll give you a sense of calm because he knows what the rules are, and there may be programs to help you settle for a whole lot less than you owe. It's Perry Cronin with Axiom Tax Resolution Group, 205tax.com, 205tax.com. That phone number is 872-1100, Axiom Tax Resolution Group. Y'all reach out to Perry before you make another miscalculation or mistake, and let's get this settled with the IRS, Axiom Tax Resolution Group. All right, let's hit the phones. We got Rick on a cell phone. We'll go back to the phone lines this hour. What do you know, Rick?
Not very much. Thank God for that. I ain't very educated. What about this body language? Can't they tell something about what's going on with this body language? That's all I got.
You mean from the video that was released today?
From the missing person, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they've got incredible technology that can determine someone's gait. In other words, the way you walk, your walk patterns, AI technology can match that to another person. The thing, though, Rick, is you've got to have the other person's, I guess, gait, G-A-I-T. You got to have their gait profile somewhere stored. It's like fingerprints. You can't match a fingerprint. What's that?
What about their emotions? What about their emotions and their facial expressions?
Well, if you got a mask on, it's hard to see your emotions, as we all learned during COVID.
My call, buddy.
All right,
I
Rick.
love what y'all do, and I love you too, man.
All right, thanks, Rick. There's Rick tonight with some questions. People with more questions, and I am too. I got more questions than theories at this point with that whole case. But yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. Anytime you have, say, DNA evidence, you can pull DNA evidence from a crime scene, and y'all know this, but unless you've got that DNA on file somewhere, you're not going to get a random hit. Now, you can go have a suspect and get a DNA sample. Then you got a match if you're trying to rule in or out suspects, and that would be the same thing with this gait profile. If they've got somebody under surveillance, they can measure their walking patterns and then turn around and match that to the walking patterns of this person that is subject to this camera video that we were treated to today when they released it, because he does walk several steps from the outside of the house up toward the house. I'm also interested that maybe that's just only when this data became recorded, why it picked him up, where it picked him up. And I also think it looked to me like in one of the shots that he might have had on some kind of flashlight and then he turned it off as he approached the house. I could be wrong on that, because especially with infrared cameras and the way they shoot certain things in the dark, some things can look like, some reflections can look like light when it's just that. It's a infrared sort of reflection onto whatever it is that's being observed. But again, I'll go back to this and we'll say it one more time, and we'll re-update everything at the top of the hour. One of the more startling things to me, and don't wreck the car when I put this out there, but y'all, if you've been following this case today, you know what I mean. The FBI can get surveillance video from cameras that are around you, even if you don't have a subscription and the camera didn't report anything in. These guys have technology to go through this surveillance state, all the data streams, and recreate a video like this that really in a lot of ways didn't exist as a video. It was just data that had not been processed as video. They go back in time and find out, according to the people that early reported on this, that Nest camera was not connected to any kind of cloud. So where did they get that? And how did they do that? I'm sure some expert is going to be all over the TV shows tonight describing that process. But that's a little stunning, a little frightening. Top of the hour. 1819 News on the way. Back here in just a minute. Leland Live.